CEO almost fired me on the spot, by user salty_firetrucks. So I worked at tech support for a big German retailer and the CEO's laptop needed some updates on several programs, because we weren't allowed to push that remotely on him, his rule. I go into his office and he was already annoyed about the fact it was going to take longer than 2 seconds. So he said he was going on a break. I do the thing and left. Took me 30 seconds. I get a call from him 5 minutes later. You fucked up my computer, my screen is flashing and I can't press anything, get in here now. Sweat pouring down my back as I took the elevator and came back in. What the fuck did you do? I can't do shit here without you guys messing up every tiny thing. I swear I'm getting a whole new department if this shit happens again. I looked, screen flashing, couldn't even get to reboot. Panic intensifies. I look over to his side of the desk and there's a remote numpad with a folder on the enter key. I push the folder off the thing and couldn't hide the grin off my face. This didn't happen, okay? Don't tell anyone downstairs. First thing I did. Condescending fuck. I installed my old computer from 2 computers ago onto this computer and now it's very slow, by user 5th_degree_burns. I have to write this out to unpack what literally just happened 20 to 30 minutes ago. I received a call from an employee at our company who is unable to open Outlook. It's giving an OST error. She comes out swinging for the fences with. I did an update on my new computer that I just got, and now the internet is slow in the house. Can you fix that? What did you update? Word. I explained that Word doesn't affect the speed of the internet in your home. She was incapable of simply accepting what I was saying and continued. But I also just installed my old computer from 2 computers ago onto this computer, and now it's slow. Can you make it the new computer again? What do you mean you installed your old computer onto this one? I was told to move the desktop to this computer and I'm afraid that when I moved the desktop it changed the settings to make it run slower. Settings for what? You know. The insides. The processor, fans, memory. That kind of stuff. Yes. Now the parts are my old computer from 2 computers ago. Again, I explained that this isn't how it works, and the desktop is just files that are on your desktop, aka home screen. She wasn't having it. Mercifully I was able to get a new mail profile set up and that was fine. She did ask me how I got her mail on this computer when it was already delivered to another computer, which was also excellent. I told her to call her internet provider because I can't revert the update that broke her internet and they'll have to do it. I reread this and if I didn't literally just experience that, I would think this is made up. That's not a usable ground, by user Viper 30,000. Once upon a time in the not-so-distant past I installed large-scale PBX phone systems in a number of southern states. We did hospitals, businesses, and a surprising number of department stores. It was one of those stores where this story takes place. I was working for a company whose phone systems had an onboard computer system complete with 8 floppies and a distinct dislike for unsteady power. In order to appease the PBX gods we had a strict list of requirements for the room environmentals and the power and grounding. The room needed to be clean and without excessive dust, with climate control, temperature in the 70-degree range on the Fahrenheit scale. Most of all, it needed dedicated 3-phase 208 VAC power with a dedicated computer ground. This involved the XO lug on the supply transformer and ideally included a link to a ground rod or building steel. The number of times I, a brash young guy in my mid-20s, had to inform a crusty good old boy electrician that what he thought was a ground wasn't good enough and whether the resultant storm still gives me nightmares, but it paled to one install I did in a small city in South Carolina. I arrived at the start of the scheduled installation week bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go. As we descended to the intended phone room I became quickly aware of the technological revelation that we were bringing to this store. Sitting outside the phone room was the current phone console, with the operator wearing a headset and very literally switching and connecting calls like you see in old movies, plugging and unplugging cables in an upright patch panel. Keep in mind that this was the late 80s. From the room next to her, our destination, I heard a steady clack, clack, clack of machinery. Upon entry I discovered that the phone system was the old-style stepping switch equipment. The noise in the room was deafening and relays and contacts continually made and released. My interest in the antiquated equipment was, however, dampened by the condition of the room. They had mounted the plywood on the wall that we required for our 66 blocks, wiring points, and electrical power had been pulled into the room, but that was it. There was no ground bar, no power, the room was at least 90 degrees, and worst of all, the floor was covered in such a thick layer of dirt and dust that we were leaving footprints as we walked. I immediately informed our customer contact that this was not acceptable and why, and after I left a specific list of items that needed to be done before I returned, I drove back to the airport to return home. A week later I returned to the site, and things were better, marginally. The floor had been wet mopped, so that parts of it were now at least clean enough to see the tile, but other sections were covered with dried mud where the mop water and floor dirt combined and settled down together. The ground and electrical still hadn't been done, and the HVAC contractor was there giving a quote for putting A/C in the room. The room was still unusable and the client wasn't happy when I told him as much. We had one more quick meeting going over the problems, and handwritten copies of our requirements were given to everyone involved and a few people that weren't. Since the floor in that spot was relatively clean, I uncrated and moved the phone switch, the main cabinet with the phone system, in this case about 6x6x3, into position and mounted some of my equipment on the wall. I then returned home for another week. 1 week later I was on site in the store's basement again, and this time was pleasantly surprised to feel a blast of cool air hit me in the face as I opened the door. The floor had been decently cleaned and looked good. My pleasure started slipping as I walked through the room, however. The electrical source still was not terminated. I saw no ground bar on the wall. The air conditioning had been lovingly and professionally installed, complete with open-top drip pan, directly over the top of my $200,000 phone system. My imagination didn't have to work hard to figure out where that condensation was going to the first time that the drip pan drain clogged and the pan overflowed, and the realization wasn't good. Calming myself, I asked about the 208V power. The building engineer replied that they had tried and were unable to find that particular NEMA connector anywhere. I grabbed the nearest phone book, remember, it's the 80S, specifically the yellow pages, and found an electrical supply store within walking distance. I left the store and walked down to the supplier, who quickly sold me the necessary electrical connector. I took it back and tossed it to the engineer with a jaunty "There you go." Then I addressed the last item on my list. "Where's the ground?" I asked. The engineer pointed me to a large 1-1/2 braided copper cable mounted in the corner. It disappeared into holes in the floor and the ceiling. "Okay," I said, pointing to the hole in the floor. "Where does that go?" I asked. "To a 6-foot ground rod under the building," the engineer replied proudly. "Excellent," I replied. "And where does that go?" I asked, pointing to the hole in the ceiling that the cable disappeared into. "To the lightning rods on the roof," he replied. He wanted me to connect his new $200,000 phone system, and every phone in the building, to the lightning rods on the roof. We didn't do the installation that weekend, either. "Why are you remoting to my machine in the middle of a lesson?" We're not," by user Ejit_25. "Hi guys. So I work in IT support at a secondary school in the UK. This happened today. Some site information, like most places, users cannot buy and install their own software or peripherals or anything like that. We got a ticket today that read, I can see that someone is remotely logged into my account. This is so strange, please clarify what's going on?" Definitely not enough information to help out anyway, so ask her to elaborate. Someone is opening and closing folders and windows on her machine while she's trying to teach. Now we do have remote desktop software on our machines, so we checked that no one in the IT department was actually on a remote session on this machine at the time, no dice. So after the lesson and after she has left the classroom, I do then remote into the machine to see if I can replicate what was happening. Not happening when I have control of the machine, but as soon as I give control back, text is being highlighted and folders are opening and closing. I make my way to the offending PC's classroom and log in. Can't see anything that could be causing it, the desk is pretty messy though. As soon as I get logged in, news apps, and volume control, network connections start popping up like they're being clicked on. I had my arm leant on a stack of booklets covered in post-it notes with paper registers strewn under them. There's also 2 plastic cups at the top of this nest of clutter. I move my arm and suddenly the desktop is calm, no movement at all. Strange. I start moving the cluttered paperwork and spy something black and plastic at the bottom of the pile. I'm sure I know what this is at this point, but keep clearing to confirm my suspicions. At the bottom of the pile is an pen writing/drawing tablet, which I check, yep, plugged in, and the plastic cup full of pens is constantly clicking the left click button. We had no idea that this department even had these tablets, and had never even heard of them before this. After fixing the remoting to the PC issue, I get back to the office to 4 tickets from this department asking how to use these said tablets. We're going to have a lot of fun confiscating them. Dr. teacher thinks someone is remoting to her machine, but has caused the issue herself with stacking crap on top of a writing tablet, that she's not allowed to have. Let me upload these programming changes to the robotic arms. Oh no, by user computer 1313. An old, short story from a previous coworker. He was working at an automotive manufacturing plant many years ago and was reprogramming the paint robotic arms for the incoming new truck model. He uploaded the changes and started the automated painting system with a test truck frame to see how the paint job is done. He had his hand over the emergency stop button in case anything went wrong. All he remembered from the immediately ensuing chaos was that one of the robotic arms struck a steel beam and broke off its nozzle, so now a solid jet of paint was spraying everywhere. Another arm spazzed out and repeatedly smashed the frame like a hammer, caving in the truck's roof. He said he was so shocked that he didn't press the emergency stop until he heard yelling. It took a long time for the paint fumes to be vented out so they could go in, clean up the paint mess and repair the damages. Oh, and it was the day when the plant management was giving corporate executives a tour of the place. I asked what did their facial expressions look like when they saw the ruined paint station, and he said it pure horror. He wouldn't tell me what nicknames he got from his co-workers at that place.